Hi guys, welcome to the Improvement Season podcast. It is me, Steve Hall, with a freshly cut head of hair. And on the other side is still the guy that's more handsome than me, Harry Smith, or aka Thor, is back on the show.
Thanks for the introduction. I've got a fresh haircut as well, actually. Yeah. So,
how much was your haircut?
Is that how we determine like where in the country you live? Mine, I only got the back and sides done, so it's only £14. How much was yours?
Yours is £1 cheaper than mine.
Really? But did you get the top done as well?
I guess it was. I didn't even know that was a thing, that if you didn't get the top done, it was cost less.
My barber's got literally like about 25 different combinations of haircut you can get. It's like, proper upsell kind of situation. It's like you can get just the sides done. Yeah, literally. It's beard is extra, eyebrows are extra. What was the other thing? Yeah, doing the top is extra, a wash is extra. It's like, yeah, you can spend about 50 quid.
That's damn. Yeah, I didn't even think there was that option. But I always get I just don't know what I actually normally get. I'm just like, can I get I think it's a high fade 0 from a 0 or less than a 0. And he's like, they don't speak very good English. And I'm just like, oh, God, this is my, I go to probably the cheapest sort of barbers that's available to me. It's just the closest.
Do they always ask you what you had last time? And you're like, I don't know, you tell me.
One guy did say, he was like, you should just take a picture and then bring that in. And then we can do that each time.
Yeah, I remember now. Mine's 0.5 because of the years of going to the same place. Every time I walk in, it's like, was it 1? Was it 2? I'm like, don't know.
Mine was, I didn't even realize there was less than 0. Mine's 0 is like, it's more than skin, because you can say a skin fade, but it's in between the two. So
I can't get it too short, or Hannah won't stop rubbing my head because she likes how it feels when it's spiky. And
yeah,
I hate it when people touch my head. So I think that's like a survivor listing, isn't it? Someone touching like your most vulnerable part of you. Yeah, sorry.
What was I going to say? I can't even remember. So, Harry, where have you been since the last time you came on? Has it been like a month? You have changed. You're in a different phase now, at least.
Yeah, so I think it was probably a little bit more than a month ago. So I was in my sort of Gaintenance phase. I don't know why I said it in like quotation marks, but I was in my Gaintenance phase beforehand, where we were in a little bit of a calorie surplus and essentially trying to expedite my dropping of diet fatigue, ready to go into the contest prep. And now I am in I think I've just started my 3rd or 4th week of my contest prep. And we're aiming to get me ready I can't remember if it's the end of August or beginning of August, but it's for the UK DFBA show. I'm going into the men's physique.
Can't remember the date of the show either, but I think it's mid-August.
Yeah.
Need to put it, plan backwards from it. But Harry is, you're already pretty damn lean. And then so the kind of Gaintenance, it was like a prolonged primer phase, but higher volumes. And I think that was definitely warranted. And actually, it was really nice to talk to Peter Fitchen on the podcast yesterday. I spoke to him, and the episode's not out yet, but he was talking about, and I was trying to see whether or not what his method was to taking people to stage. And I haven't read their, it's not an ebook, it's a hardcover book. But I haven't read that, so I wasn't sure if they did like a pre-diet before then doing like the contest prep diet. But he says he always tries to plan that with people who are considerably over stage weight. So that kind of like double pump approach, I guess you might call it, to dieting seems to be catching on a little bit, where it's like non-linear dieting, but the kind of break is much more apparent. And something I thought was really cool is how you were describing, like you're 3 to 4 weeks into the diet, I'd say you're probably sub 10% or getting towards that point at least.
The front of me is, the back of me isn't. All my body fat's on my lower back and hips. So from the front, I look really good, which is why all the Instagram posts are from the front. But
I feel that. Mine's like my upper body looks good and my lower body is just like, it's trying. Lower body never looks quite as good. But I was going to say, you, in terms of diet fatigue and everything, how did you find, like by the end of the diet phase before it, and now you've just gone through that kind of period of time away from dieting and now you're dieting again, have you felt the benefit of having that break?
Yeah, for sure. Towards the end of my sort of diet before the diet, I really started struggling with diet fatigue. Not so much adherence, but just like it felt like it was a massive daily effort to stick to the plan. I wasn't deviating from the plan, but it felt like I was putting in an exponential amount of effort for nothing back. because we found that my body weight wasn't really changing and stuff like that. So we actually finished out about a week or so early in order to start the Gaintenance phase and the primer phase. But I was thinking to myself yesterday, actually, I've never been this lean, but this little stressed out by it before. And that's because the last time I did get really lean for a photo shoot, we immediately went into a massing phase afterwards. So I basically spent like one day in photo shoot condition. And I think right now I'm probably about 3 weeks away from that condition that I was in, but I don't feel like a zombie. I don't feel run down. I feel really good. And I was actually thinking, like, even though this is my first prep, I'm really glad that we did do like a diet before the diet and then take a break before diving in, because I almost feel like I'm starting the diet for the first time now pretty lean, rather than having like months of dieting behind me and then months of dieting in front of me as well. So yeah, I really like this approach, even though it's my only experience of this approach, but I can see the benefit of it, and we'll for sure be doing it with clients, because it almost wasn't even a thing that was considered a few years ago. Like back when I first got into the fitness industry and was doing my own research and reading and stuff, you never heard about people doing non-linear dieting. It was always, I think Jeff Albert's jumps to mind for me, where it's like, right, I've got a show in like 18 months time or whenever it was, diet starts now. And it was just like really slow rate of weight loss for such a long period of time, which like theoretically on paper sounds fine. But when you think about the actual, the social side of it and the relationship side of it you have with your family and just the lifestyle side of it, it's just really not that practical. So I'm really glad we kind of chunked it, and it just makes a lot of sense. And I feel like it's going really well because I have a really good structure in place now anyway. So my structure's not falling apart because I've been dieting for so long. It's, yeah, pretty much just feel like I'm just rinsing and repeating the same thing every day.
That I have got experience with just like not really doing non-linear dieting. There was like moderate refeeds that I had during my first contest prep when I was coached, but the idea of diet breaks, I don't think they were even something that was apparent. It wasn't even a concept. Refeeds were there, but more so like maybe single to maybe double day refeeds were something. And I remember, I think I started dieting in January and had a show all the way into September, lost 30 pounds over that period of time, which is a pretty slow rate of loss when you look at it all. But it just, I think something I really noticed was I was just dragging my heels like really badly, kind of 2 months out from show, 3 months out from show, I was already dragging. And I think what we're seeing and what you kind of described, you were towards the end of that first diet phase, your kind of feet were dragging and it was feeling kind of increasingly more difficult for what it should be. Mm-hmm. I think that's that kind of idea of, and I'm just thinking I would love to do an infographic on this, but it's kind of vaguely evidence-based because it's kind of fat loss efficiency. And it's a case of, I think non-linear dieting, even though there's days not dieting, your actual fat loss efficiency increases because you end up being able to diet on more food and lose weight more effectively. And you end up not kind of getting to that point where you are like really slowly moving. And I guess the point at which and where I think probably took it, where we took like that maintenance period and where I'm planning to, I'm kind of in two minds about whether or not I'm there yet or not, or if I've got a bit more to come off. But it's like that lower end of like your settling range where you feel comfortable at a certain body fat. You don't really want to be taking like prolonged diet break when you're already in like the shit zone where you're like on fire and burning and you're just too lean, you can't maintain it. You kind of want to take it just before you're going into that. And I think that's something that we pretty much nailed. That's why I'm currently in a position where I'm like, am I just before that? Or have I got a bit, I'd planned one more mesocycle of dieting for myself before I took an extended break. But I'm like, am I already at that point? I think I've probably got another month of dieting, which is what's kind of for me next.
I think you'd get away with a shorter training block. Like if you had another, say, 6 weeks of dieting, I might have been like, maybe you wouldn't make it to the end. But if you say you shortened the training cycle, maybe, I don't know, but depends whether it suits your rigid routine that I know you have. You're like,
it's really funny. I just sent over my kind of idea of where I'm going next. And actually, I kind of, after I sent the back shot to Pascal, like I took it in the weekend, I trained with Jack Rayner, who hopefully is listening to this, and his client, Brandon. I actually met a couple of other people, well, someone else I'd competed against in 2017, and another competitor. He was a heavyweight and he competed last year and came fourth at the UK DFBA finals. And like, he's coming to the Eric Helms Mike Israetel, Jared, Alberto seminar. So it was really
the
cool
ultimate
to
showdown.
Yeah, bump into these people at Muscleworks. I guess that's the benefit of training at like an actual bodybuilding
Was that their
gym.
local gym, Muscleworks, or they just happened to go there?
I think it's their local gym,
or at least the one they're making their regular gym. Yeah,
yeah, they've seen me like when we went down as a team and things. They'd seen us there, and they're like, "Oh, how come they're here?" So maybe I'll go there on weekends now and then when I'm feeling like I need a bodybuilding environment boost or something like that. But what was I saying? So yeah, from that video, which looked kind of shockingly lean, in hindsight, when I compare that to then like shitty lighting, I don't look that impressive. And I think it probably gave a false perception of how near to stage ready I am. So actually having then looked at my plans, I don't think they needed to change really. I think I'm still in the same boat. So I've effectively got a 4-week diet phase after this deload. And then I will have 4 weeks of higher volume, but maintenance, pretty like Gaintenance basically, like you had. Then a 3-week primer. The third week of that should land. Oh no, I think it's 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. But the final week should land. So I'm training kind of not overreaching, but I'll be training hard when we're in, as long as it all goes ahead, for Vienna in Das Gym for my birthday. Because I was trying to plan that so it was like a hard week of training or like dieting, but basically not a deload. And it was landing right on my deload.
It lands on your deload. Sorry guys, we can't go.
The 25th, which is my birthday, but we're doing the Saturday and Sunday before it. The 25th is when that deload before prep should start. So I was like, on that weekend, I'll just fucking do whatever I like then, because I've just got a whole week of deloading coming up anyway. So then I have like 2 4-to-1 accumulation to deload paradigms before the qualifier, which is in the same one in August. So it's kind of scary to think that I'll only have 8 weeks or about 8 weeks of dieting before that first show. But
how much weight are you expecting to drop in that 8 weeks though?
About 5 pounds. So I'll be down at about 175 pounds probably after this kind of deficit phase. Maybe gain a couple during the kind of Gaintenance and primer, but I reckon I'll be able to lose and get down to about 170 pounds for that first qualifier, which I predict is about 5 pounds away from true ridiculous shreds, which is hopefully the UKD finals, which is 2 months after that. Mm-hmm. So each of my shows basically have been landing on a deload, which is brilliant because that's kind of where you want them to.
Yeah, for sure.
And I got quite cool news that I can compete in the BMBF this year.
Oh, yeah.
Because strictly the MPA and UKD /WMBF are like natural, lifetime natural. I think they have the WMBF has like a 10-year policy, but they were flexible on my kind of medical grounds as long as I passed the polygraphs, whereas the BMBF were just like, nah, you can't compete with us. So until you're 7 years drug free of it. And April this year, I will have been 7 years free because I just messaged my GP and got my doctor's note and I found out. So that was quite cool that I can compete under BMBF lighting, which is one of the biggest things about it.
So that lie detector training's going well then?
I would be awful. Even when I'm telling the truth, I end up just laughing or looking uncomfortable and awkward. I'm just that person. But the polygraph that I did in 2017 was super stressful. That was not fun. And there's always a risk of polygraphs are not 100% by any means. But I think from my understanding, it's not just if you fail the polygraph, you can't compete. It's a case of, why did you fail it? Let's look into that. I don't think they just take it as
well, they do a urine test if you fail the polygraph. Is that kind of how it works?
Don't think so, because the urine test can only test what's in your system currently, I think, or recently. Depends on the half-life, I guess, of whatever substance you're taking. I don't know, but I've just heard on the grapevine somewhere it was people were bad-mouthing polygraphs.
You heard it in the changing room at the gym. Yeah.
People were, I think it was on Facebook probably, someone posted about polygraph and someone said, they're complete rubbish, and someone else was they're a good deterrent, and they're not it's, you kind of fail the polygraph and it's a case of what then is next. It's not, I don't think it's a case of just black and white. Now you failed it. You just can't. It's a case of, okay, you failed it. Now we're going to investigate into things because someone, I guess, I don't know. I watch too many of these police documentaries and dramas where if anyone wanted to look into me, they could find out if I was or not. Like, you just need to follow me for like a week and you see I talk to a dealer or something. I don't know. Or they could check my emails or my phone, whatever it be. So like, if it came to that, I just feel like you could quite easily prove otherwise. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, it's like, as far as I'm aware, that from my understanding of a polygraph, is it's a stress detector rather than a lie detector. And the theory behind it is that you would be more stressed out lying than you would be telling the truth. But
I'm just super stressed.
It's a stressful situation anyway, isn't it? So that's why they ask the baseline questions. Stressed. Yeah, like it's a stressful situation, like being plugged into a machine and have people ask you questions anyway. So that's why it's not admissible in court as a way of detecting like who the culprit of a crime is, because the whole environment is not kind of ecologically valid anyway. So
yeah, and I guess, I don't know. Again, I watch too many of these Netflix dramas, but like psychopaths and
they would never fail a lie detector because they don't get stressed out by lying. Yeah. Not that I know anything about that. Yeah.
Anything else of interest going on your end? Diet's going well. You're feeling good. Have you? I guess it's a case of getting comfortable with starting to think about the poses and things like that. I'm still at that phase where I feel like a complete idiot when I pose, so I need to rehearse that and get much better at that. It's a bit of a relief for me doing the men's physique poses rather than the bodybuilding poses, because I'm kind of hyper aware of how much of a weak point my legs are. So being able to cover them up is like a massive relief, because I don't almost have to worry about like flexing them to an extent. I'm sure like that is part of the posing, but I mean, I don't have to be thinking in my head like, am I showing my erectus femoris? Like, am I showing my vastus medialis? That kind of stuff. But yeah, and I've actually found a renewed motivation to train my calves now rather than to just be like, right,
because they're actually going to be on show, whereas my quads and hamstrings aren't. So I'm like, I might as well try and improve the appearance of them. But yeah, I definitely need to get some posing classes booked in. That's the next thing on the list. Training's going pretty well though. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it a lot more than I did through the Gaintenance phase. I found the Gaintenance phase training got to be a bit of a drag, and I don't really know why. I think it's because I was in the middle of setting up my home gym and stuff as well. So instead of having a training block designed with my home gym in mind, I was trying to adapt like my training block that had a commercial gym in mind to fit inside the limited equipment that I have. So yeah, I found that I was making lots of compromises and stuff like that. Whereas this training block's been much better. I've actually been able to use, I'm just enjoying training really.
And I guess, did you notice any benefit? I guess there may have been a psychological one, but also there's physiological rationale behind the fact that we took the lower volume kind of period before coming into this. And maybe that had a bit of that led to better motivation and just better pumps and feeling. And I guess as much as I hate to say it, because I don't want to feel this way, but the block between the two like diets, I imagine it always feels a bit like, I'm not like pushing for the show, but I'm like, I know I'm refueling for it. It just kind of, I'm not in an off season, but I'm not in a prep. So it just feels a bit like you're a bit in no man's land. So it's kind of hard to be as motivated in that time, which I'm predicting I'm going to feel that way a little bit.
I did feel that way. I'm always surprised at how much BS I can get away with diet wise and not gain weight when I go through like primer phases and stuff like that. So like we had Christmas in that period and everything like that. So I generally keep the same nutrition structure all the time, but I tend to find that I can maintain calories on like a much kind of bigger window of calories than, for example, you can lose weight on in a calorie deficit. And I always just find it really interesting that you almost feel like you get away with more than you deserve in those kind of phases. Whereas like, for example, if you're in a calorie deficit and you have a massive like Papa John's pizza, like you're not losing weight. At least I wouldn't lose weight for like 10 days probably as a result of that. Whereas when I'm in a Gaintenance period, I'll lose weight the next day. It's like, I find that my body is a lot less predictable through those kind of phases than when I'm in a diet, which it might be the other way around for other people. But there you go. Helpful bit of information about me.
I can see that. And you've made me hungry now because all I'm thinking about is pizza.
This morning I was at the gym where I train clients, and then one of the PTs next to me, he's actually one of my clients as well. So he's in a massing phase and he's just coming to the point where no food tastes nice and his entire diet is essentially hyperpalatable foods. So I'm working on my laptop with a tub of blueberries next to me, and then he's sitting there with this. He went to a cafe and ordered pancakes to take away. So he had this like cardboard container with like 8 American pancakes with shortbread sprinkled all over it, chocolate sauce and syrup. And I'm like, are you really at that point? Because he was like, it's not even nice. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Just we're complete opposite physiological and psychological states. It's quite funny to see you see sat next to each other. Like, I'm like, these blueberries taste amazing, and he's like, these pancakes taste shit.
It's actually it's scary because I was not long ago at that point where food just tasted like I didn't enjoy anything that I was eating. It just was not enjoyable. Whereas now I'm just like, everything tastes amazing, and I'm just like just eating a hot crust bun during my like diet break this week. And I'm like, these. Like I'm going to eat a whole pack. Like I can't help myself. I didn't eat a whole pack. I ate 2, but the feeling of like just even like you said, blueberries, carrots. I can eat just plain oatmeal with water, and that tastes fine.
I haven't got to the point where oats and water is tasting nice to me yet, but oats with milk is just like the most amazing food on the planet for me right now. I love it.
It's scary how quickly that sort of thing kicks in. Actually, so I think hopefully having this little bit of a break after this next month of dieting, I'll be able to get to a bit more, but I still haven't gone to like in terms of using all those dieting tools. I tend to get to a point where I'm using so many different like sweeteners or like filling myself with veggies where I just end up feeling kind of bleh all the time, and then I have to remove those and just go to more of a basic boring diet. So just have to catch myself before that starts kicking in, because I have found like the thing I liked during the off season, I started like I didn't feel like I ever needed chewing gum or I ever needed like a Diet Coke or something. Whereas now I'm like, I have to have my like diet lemonade, have to have my chewing gum. If I haven't got those at home, I'm like, what can I have instead? I need something to like just satisfy something sweet. And I think that's when I know it's becoming a bit of a problem for me, when I'm like that focused on needing that kind of extra fake energy. It's just not energy.
I haven't quite got to that point yet. But I'm starting to feel it is there a little bit, where I'm like, until now in this dieting phase, I've been feeling satisfied by my meals and stuff like that. Literally today was the first day where I had my breakfast, and then I wanted my next meal about an hour and a half earlier than I would schedule it kind of mentally. And that was like the first like kind of not warning sign, but the first kind of thing in my head where I'm like, things are going to get harder from here on out.
Yeah, I totally see.
I can't have all my meals an hour and a half early. So.
And then you just end up going to bed early. I have actually found that's something weird the past couple of weeks. Actually, past like few weeks, I just found I was getting tired earlier. I don't know if that's related to, I've spoken about before, like the sleep pressure, adenosine of like ATP is that sleep pressure if you're dieting, or like I guess when you're really overreaching, you're creating more of that sleep pressure. And so you're feeling more tired, but you don't sleep as well when you're in an overreach state anyway. So I don't know what I'm talking about really, but I'm getting tired earlier. I'm just finding that like...
Yeah, I'm finding that for sure. Like I keep falling asleep on the sofa at like 9 p.m. And I slept for 12 hours on Saturday night as well.
That's ridiculous.
So, yeah. That would never happen to me in an off season, like ever. It's just like you said, the sleep pressure is like hitting me in the face at like literally at like 8:45 at night now.
Damn. You're up early though, right?
Yeah, I get up about 5 usually, but I'm not amazingly busy this week, so I haven't needed to get up before 7. But I'm still finding that around like 8:30, 9 o'clock, I'm like really struggling to stay awake and focused.
Never good. That's part of the sated score. That was the like, can you stay wakeful through without feeling like you need a coffee or something?
I'm fine during the day. In the morning, it's like I said, it's the evening where I'm just like.
Oh, sorry, in the evening. I thought you were saying 8. Okay, got you. Yeah,
no, not in the morning.
That's fine. No. I think that's quite normal. That's a good thing. Cool.
Yeah, great.
Anything else? Do you want to get some questions?
Yeah, that'd probably be good. That's probably why people tuned into the podcast in the first place, isn't it? And then we just hit them with a rant about our own personal experiences.
Yeah, I don't know. We have a mix of listeners. Some people are like, we'd like more question time. Other people just tune in because they want to hear us talk about absolute random stuff, like the fact that they should go to Waitrose and buy the chocolate cherry hot crust buns and see if they don't eat the entire pack. Anyway.
Yeah, use that as your score for like, how diet fatigued am I? Yeah. Am I going to binge on this right now?
I'm setting up all these bingers now. Then they can come and be our client. Although we don't actually want to work with people who have binge eating disorder. You probably want to go to someone else, ideally. Anyway,
we can refer you out to people if you do have those problems.
Yeah,
we'll be the great middleman.
So as a tradition, we always get a question from Andrew. So Andrew Potacek has asked, and you know Andrew, don't you?
How could I not know Andrew?
Yeah, you know Andrew.
Yeah. Mr.
So,
Flex. Yeah.
Mr. Flex. He said, views on intra-workout supplements or use of fruit post and pre to enhance carb absorbing. Hi guys, Steve here. Just wanted to take a moment of your time to remind you of the Revive Stronger member site. Inside, you'll find a thriving forum, a growing exercise library, presentations, research reviews, and courses. If you want to get involved, sign up via the description.
I think
so you can just answer one part and then the next. Yeah.
For me personally, that's a case of overcomplicating something. I wouldn't necessarily worry about where my carbohydrate sources are coming from. Post-workout, I eat fruit. For me, fruit is a way of hitting micronutrients, like rather than it is a way of hitting carbohydrates. Just at least the way I think about it in my head. So, but I tend to move more towards berries and stuff like that. So the way I think about that question is like, how many blueberries do I need to eat to get like a meaningful amount of carbohydrates? But the first part of the question, like in intra-workout supplements, it's never something I've really done. I went through my phase of having a whey protein shake during my workout when I was about 19. I can't even remember why now. I probably read something on a bodybuilder.com forum that said I needed to do it. But other than that, like I wouldn't really supplement mid-workout. I have had some clients do it where they've, like a leg day was a lot more brutal than they expected it to be. And they've kind of had a pre-workout, mid-workout. And I'm sure it's worked as more of a placebo because of the amount of time it takes for caffeine to actually like hit the bloodstream and have an effect. So there's that instance where I've used pre-workouts. But other than that, I can't really think of a reason to supplement mid-workout.
So yeah, in terms of, I think it was more talking about maybe intra-workout, like carbs or EAAs or something. But I use one because I split my sessions up. So like to enhance glycogen replenishment. And I think as you get deeper into, in situations where maybe you're a bit glycogen depleted, it can help top off glycogen stores, potentially. And also there's been some studies on, the like carbohydrate mouthwash or whatever it is, where they just like...
Yeah, the mouth rinse.
Yeah, they rinse it and they don't actually take it in. So I guess you're getting the kind of, that seemed to help performance. So I guess if you're drinking it instead of just rinsing it, you're still getting that kind of somewhat of a placebo effect of something going on. But I think, yeah, if you're someone who's like very high volume session and you're struggling to get through it, or someone who's maybe, so you're getting to maybe a slightly glycogen depleted state, but I mean, for bodybuilding, it's going to be pretty tough to do that. Maybe if you're dieting and quite lean, I think they can be quite helpful in that case. Unfortunately, that's when you don't typically want to.
There's a paradox here where I'm thinking it might be a good idea for some small female clients who have barely any calories in the deep, dark depths of prep. But then again, they don't have enough calories to warrant an intra-workout carbohydrate hit. So
maybe then I would use like the mouth rinsing. That might be something quite cool.
Could you trust yourself not to swallow?
I know.
When you're that dark, deep in prep though. Yeah.
I wonder if, because quite a lot of people use chewing gum. I wonder if there's something about that.
Probably.
And actually, I think you can get caffeine chewing gum, and that is, I think, absorbed quicker than like a coffee or something, a liquid. So I wonder if there's something there.
It tastes really metallic if it had caffeine in it. Yeah. Like chewing an iPhone or something like that.
So yeah, I think there is some place for intra-workout supplementation, but it's not for the majority of people. And then fruit. I've seen the fruit and carbohydrates in Andrew Chappelle talked about it a little bit when he talked about his peak week, where he used like a fructose, like glucose mix to help with like carbohydrate loading. And this is to do with like multi-transportable carbs because they like get absorbed via different pathways. I think this is like taking the whole, like people talk about having carbs post-workout. This is like taking that another level where it's like, we have this post-workout window and now we have to get through the window as soon as possible. Again, I think if you're not, and maybe if you're training twice per day, that might be something you consider, but I don't think most people need to worry about like getting multiple transportable carbohydrates in personally. I think some people have seen benefit there, but I'm same as you, Harry. Like I think it's nice to have like a fruit with a pre-workout meal, but I'm not really thinking about it in the way that it's like, oh, this is going to mean my performance is so much better in the gym.
Yeah. I actually have fruit in my pre-workout, but that's not because of any like particular benefit I'm looking for. It's just because it's a really convenient time of the day for me to add in some berries.
Yeah, I think some people, and I like, because I quite like the little details and stuff. I think sometimes people hear these things and like, oh, fructose and like glucose use different like transports, and so I can load the muscles quicker, and that may well help performance. And it sounds kind of like, because we, especially people who know quite a lot about training and nutrition, we kind of try and grasp on anything that sounds new and sexy and kind of, it sounds really like appealing. It's like, oh, I'm not just eating this because it's like a good wholesome meal to have pre-workout. It's like, it's got like there's legit science, like deep science about this. And sometimes I think it just kind of sounds a bit sexy and maybe is overthinking it a little bit. I'm not sure many of the pro bodybuilders are considering that sort of detail, but again, it's just my kind of thoughts.
No, I agree pretty much with that. Yeah.
So we have another question from Vijay Shindi, and I probably pronounced his name wrong, but he has said, carb intake for weight training athlete, what proportion of different type of carbs would you recommend? Say out of 300 grams of carbs, how much veggie, fruit, complex carbs, and milk and yogurt and white bread pasta? He says, my carb intake from milk seems higher. Over how many grams of carbs from milk you would be concerned? Also, how much proportion of carb would you think reasonable around your training window? Would you consume more than 50% of your daily intake of carbs around training? And he said, Pascal, thanks for saying my name correct. I apologize for saying your name because I definitely said it incorrectly. But Harry's going to answer your question.
I think the one piece of information we're missing there is what kind of training phase are you in and what kind of nutrition phase are you in? Because the answers would be pretty different depending on whether you're, say, in a dieting phase or a massing phase or a maintenance phase. So if you were in a cutting phase, I would say all the carbs from veggies, at least as many of them. Like if you hit the minimum requirements for veggies, so if we want, was it 2 to 3 veggies per 1,000 calories consumed? I like to go a little bit higher than that because I tend to find it definitely helps with satiety to a degree. So I would probably have a much greater proportion. But if you're on 300 grams of carbs, it's probably closer to sort of being isocaloric, maybe maintenance calories for a lot of people. So in that instance, I would try and hit your, so if you're 300 grams of carbs, let's say your maintenance calories is at 2,000, I'd probably try and hit maybe 5 servings of veggies from that as a carbohydrate whatever 5 servings of veggies are in carbohydrates. I've never really sat down and figured that out. And then the rest, I'd probably follow like what the general like healthy eating guidelines of 80%-ish of your diet coming from whole foods and stuff like that. So then I would get the rest from the more complex carbs and fruits. And I wouldn't worry too much, to be honest, about where it's coming from, provided that you check those minimum requirements of health, basically. And yeah, I don't eat a great deal of fruit, to be honest. The only fruit I really eat is berries. But I couldn't really answer why that is. It's just preference.
Yeah, I think for me, I wouldn't attack, like if I was looking at someone and they had that many grams of carbs, I wouldn't ever attack it like you should get this many grams from this like form of carbohydrate, this much from this form of carbohydrate. I'd be like, okay, so I want you to get this much fiber. I want you to eat this much fruit and veg. Once you've hit that, then the rest of your carbohydrates should just come from mostly wholesome foods. That's basically where you were coming from, I think. And
yeah,
I don't think you need to overthink it over that. And then in terms of the grams from milk, kind of, I would say it depends on if you're lactose tolerant or not. If you're lactose intolerant, like really try and limit that.
Yeah.
You probably know if you are lactose intolerant and you're getting loads from milk, you'd be having problems. But if you feel fine, like you feel fine. And generally, like milk products are pretty helpful. Get lots of calcium, protein. Like I wouldn't be concerned about that. And then he asked about kind of, would you consume more than 50% of your daily intake of carbs around training? What do you reckon?
Again, it depends on what kind of training phase you're in. If someone's in a cut, I would consider yes, around 50%, because we want to make sure that training quality is still really, really high. Because when we're in a diet, we have a lot less tools at our disposal for maintaining and gaining new muscle tissue. So one of those is making sure that we have a productive workout that's stimulatory. In order to facilitate that, I would definitely try and move a lot of the carbohydrates in the pre and post workout window. But if you're massing, and I've got some clients who are massing on like 5,000 calories, I would not try and force 50% of your carbs like pre and immediately post workout, because that would be like, if we use like my client Domin as an example, he's on like 600 grams of carbs. So it's like 300 grams of carbs would be like I don't know, like 5 slices of white bread and 100 grams of cereal plus like 0 fat milk. It's like, no, you don't want to be doing like all that immediately before a workout. So yeah, it depends on the training phase again. So in a cut, I would definitely recommend getting about 50 to 60% of your carbs. So let's say you're on 300 grams of carbs. I probably would aim for like 100 carbs minimum pre-workout. Not immediately, but just to make sure they are in you before you work out. If it's in the first half of the day, if it's in the second half of the day, I would have like the vast majority of your carbohydrates pre-workout for sure, just to make sure that that training session is of high quality. Even if we can make that 1 hour of the day make you feel like you're massing, just to get that training quality in. But what's your perspective on that, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the need for being a little bit more careful with your nutrient timing, just like I guess intra-workout carbs would be an element of nutrient timing, really becomes much more serious when your goals are a little bit more serious, or like you're doing more advanced things like training twice a day. And the same with, as you said, if you're cutting, that's more serious. You're like contest prep, that's more serious. And that's when I'd be more thinking about nutrient timing and making sure carbs were surrounding the workout. Absolutely. And I've never really been hyper focused on I have to eat this much around my workout. It's just I want to emphasize carbs around my workout, have pre and post, and make sure they're carb heavy meals. I'm not overthinking that it has to be this many grams, it has to be kind of that precise. I just think just that emphasis is enough, and emphasize it more when you're cutting. And I think that's when it's probably most important, assuming it allows you to adhere as well. So yeah, I agree. And I think if you're massing, that's the time, like if you're on that many carbs, maybe like the intra workout, you just want to drink it then, just because it's an opportunity to get in some more food.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Cool. So let's see, are there any more supporter questions? No. Cool. So I'm just going to pick Jake Remmett. He asked, how far out from a show do you guys or your clients start shaving, buying posing trunks, etc.?
This is an interesting one, because I hate my body when it's shaven. So I'll try and leave it to the last possible opportunity. That doesn't mean that still allows for some fuck ups, because what I wouldn't want to happen, for example, is shave off everything and get like a massive razor burn or something like that. And then I've only shaved 2 days before the show. I'd probably shave maybe like 10 days out and then see how it all goes, and then do a top up a few more days out just to remove anything that might have grown back. But I don't know, would that be your recommendation, Steve?
Yeah, I did it way too early last time I competed. I don't know, I did it like 2 or 3 months before I needed to. And then it was a case of trying to maintain this like weirdly shaved look. And I eventually actually became to quite like, particularly shaving my armpits. I quite like not having armpit hair, but you had to maintain it, because it becomes prickly and stuff.
It's a really awkward place to shave as well, especially when you're dieted, because the cavity becomes like so sucked up in there, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how women do it, to be honest. It's really not very fun. But yeah, I think for most people, I like the idea of doing it like a month before their show, just because then sometimes people are very hairy and it hides detail, like particularly on the legs for a bodybuilder. And then you just get into a good habit of and making sure you're not having any of the kind of the issues with your skin, but you can like shave, moisturize, exfoliate, and you just get into a good position with that. I quite like that. Maybe like a month out. That would probably be the earliest I'd ever see someone need to do it. The latest I've had, I think it was Dan Smith, maybe did like a week out, and I was like, you're only just doing it. And I think that's probably the nearest I'd like anyone to do it, because like you said, some people I get rash and like not a good response from shaving. So
I'm the same. That's why I don't shave, because I leave it on. Yeah,
I definitely think you want to be aware of that, because the tan can hide a lot, to be honest. If you've got a few like red spots from the shaving, it will hide all of that. But if you've got like a full on, I know I think it was maybe in my first photo shoot, I think I did it really late, and I had like a rash all up like my inner thighs. And if you look at the photos, you look very closely, you can see it. And I think on stage, you probably wouldn't want that. So yeah, I'd say furthest, maybe 2 to 4 weeks is a general good guideline, I think. And in terms of posing trunks, again, I think maybe like 4 weeks out is quite nice, but
you don't want to buy them too far out though, because if you're anything like me, my waist changes like significantly over the course of a diet. So I wouldn't want to buy them, say, week 1 of the diet and then get to show date and then try them on and they're way too big, because then it will look like you're like deliberately trying to show more skin, because it has to be pulled up over the hips, doesn't it? On men's physique, at least.
Yeah, I think
or
so.
Up to the hips, yeah. So you don't want to look like, you don't want to in any way potentially be marked down because your shorts keep falling down. And you definitely do not want to be touching the waistband of your shorts either to like hoik them up. And then the same thing with women's bikinis as well. Like I know some of my clients, the bikini top the sizing there can change a great deal over the course of a diet. So
yeah, and I think for like bodybuilding, it wouldn't be much different. You could wear pants up until they look very similar. You just can like shove them up your butt a little bit, give yourself a wedgie so you can make sure you can see the glutes clearly, but it wouldn't really matter. And I think, like you said, the most important thing is buy them when they're an appropriate size. Sometimes I see guys in their off season, like 40 pounds above stage weight, and they're in their bodybuilding trunks. And I'm like, how the fuck do they fit? Because I'm even wearing my medium, like in my latest posing updates, I was wearing my medium ones. And I was like, these are actually a little bit too small. And the ones I competed in last time, my blue ones, they're a size small. If I tried to put those on now, you would see way too much. It would not be
like the in-betweeners fashion show, wouldn't
it? Cool. So we get to another question. Okay, so we're on a roll with competition questions. Michelle Evans said, how does it work with competition entry? I'm especially thinking as a newbie. I'm wondering if you just enter one and see how it goes first before entering a second, or would you just get 2 or 3 books straight away? Just wondering what would be best.
Depends on the person, but if you're doing all that dieting, you for sure want to do more than one show. Especially being like natural, it's not like you can compete every year, at least at the beginning phases of your diet. And I think even if you're natural, there's a great risk of you losing muscle every year if you compete year on year. So I would, for most clients, I generally recommend they do at least 2, just relatively close together, because you don't want to, and make a point of picking them relatively close together. So if you're only going to do 2, don't pick 2 shows that are like 8 weeks apart. Try and pick close ones. But you've got a lot more experience with this than I have, Steve. So what would you say?
I completely agree. I think a lot of first-time competitors don't...
They're fixated on one show.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had that, and I've made that mistake with clients where they've just done the one show, and then they're like, I'm done. I'm like, oh, we should... And they kind of think of doing other shows. I'm like, actually, from the get-go, we should discuss we're doing more than one. Because like you said, you've worked for like... It's basically probably prep, the dieting and recovery portion, a year of your life kind of towards this goal. But you're only in good shape for you can hold that for maybe a month or so, where you're in like competitive shape, depending on the category, I think. But like, make sure like in that month, you should be able to find a few shows you can do. Otherwise, yeah, it becomes like a flash in the pan. I definitely agree. Doing more than one show, especially you can't control who turns up on the day. You can't control placings. Your first show is never the best. You just learn like how show days run. You get new expectations for that sort of thing. Different kind of organizers also run shows better, and you just get a better awareness of that. So I think you don't need to book in really early. I think you can enter like 2 weeks out unless they get fully booked. I don't know if there's a limit to the number of competitors.
What's the earliest you can book? Like,
I'm actually not sure. You may even be able to enter like as soon as the dates are revealed.
Because I've got a couple of clients who are like, can I book it now? I'm like, I think we're like too far away. I haven't actually looked.
Yeah, I don't think most people are. It's a case of they end up trying to book too late than too early. But it's a good point, because I don't think the organizations necessarily make that super clear.
I know you can buy tickets to like Spectate now.
Yes.
I saw them see tickets on my Instagram feed trying to sell me. But I'm going to be on the stage, not the seat.
Cool.
Yeah.
We can get to another question. This is a bit long, so hopefully it's okay. Robert Chiscure Hopefully that was okay. I know it's Robert.
Sounded okay.
What are some distinctive marks of systemic fatigue / MRV in contrast to local fatigue? And given the limits of systemic MRV, what does that entail for specializing / prioritizing a muscle group? Namely, what are good specialization combos, and what do you do with other groups in terms of volume?
Okay, so I think a good thing I can do to help answer my question is give an example of a client I'm working with, which is where he basically said, like, my calves are massive. I don't care about them. I don't want to train them. So in that case, yeah, and they are massive, to be fair. So we have literally just, say I was allocating like 10 to 12 sets per week for his calves. I've just redistributed that across the muscle groups he particularly said that he wanted to, but I didn't go mad of it. I didn't just literally like take 12 from calves and just go biceps. Like, I didn't do it like that. We've, over the course of a training block, we've gradually just added more and more volume to those other places, namely like abs and delts and biceps. I think those are the main ones. And nothing really changed in the program other than the fact that there's now no calf programming at all, other than like 1 or 2 sets across the week, just essentially to see if we can even maintain them on such low volume. And then the rest of the volume has moved on to the particular muscle groups that we spoke about. But regarding like markers of overall like systemic fatigue, for me, I think a big one I notice is just motivation, desire to train completely disappears. And kind of almost an inability to finish a session productively, where you start finding that things are dropping off when they normally wouldn't. So if you take a normal, say, primer phase session, and you struggle to keep the intensity through the whole session, that's another, for me, is a given that someone has done too much volume or is surpassing their MRV. It's a very long question, though. Am I answering the right question?
No, you are. It's something that I haven't done a whole lot of specialization with clients yet, because I think they're really quite an advanced tool and not necessary until you are quite advanced. And that is where your individual muscle groups MRVs are in some greater than your total MRV in terms of capacity. And it's a good question in terms of how do you identify that, because I think it's quite difficult. And like you said, I think kind of the motivation to train and just the overwhelming sense of feeling exhausted, but muscle groups are maybe not like sore or fatigued, but you just can't perform because you just feel total body taxed. So it's like when your like squats start impeding your ability to do your bent over rows because you're just exhausted, or maybe your lower back's really fatigued, things like that, where you're just getting crossover
not
effects.
Recovering between sessions as well is the big one I forgot to mention. Like where, say, you squat on Monday and then it comes time to do your leg presses on, I don't know, Thursday, and you should be doing 3 sets of 10, but you're kind of hitting 0 reps in reserve at like 6 reps on your first set of a weight that you know that you can do for 10. Like that kind of thing are big giveaways for me, provided there's no other factors like you're sleeping the same, you're eating the same, and all that kind of stuff.
And then in terms of specialization, I think there's like levels to it. So one of the levels you kind of said is like you can take certain muscle groups and put them at maintenance volume, and you can emphasize other areas, and you can gradually move more and more muscle groups to maintenance versus prioritizing other muscle groups. You can also put some on like minimum effective volume and maintain that, and just push up other muscle groups as another way to go there. And then at like the really extreme level, you might put everything at maintenance volume and just prioritize one muscle group or maybe 2 muscle groups. You might pick one for upper body, one for lower body, and then do that for 3 months and then maintain, and then go through like a primer phase, and then pick another one for 2 months, for like 3 months, pick a couple again. But I think that's quite a gradual process that people will get to. And some people might reach, like it might be that they're not advanced. They can only train 4 days a week for an hour at a time. And it's like, well, you just don't have.
Then we ain't specializing. Yeah.
No, well, maybe you need to, because you just can't get the volume in, because your systemic MRV is capped, because you can't spread the volume out. You can't recover as much.
That makes sense.
So yeah, it's frustrating when you can get into those times when that happens with a client. But most of the time, I think most people listening to this can probably still move through their volume landmarks fine and don't need to worry about specializing, unless some people just specialize because they are a bikini competitor, and
that's what I was going to say.
The main is what they need.
The main thing I can think of would be bikini, because you don't want to mass out of the class. So unless people, if someone's like hell bent on staying in bikini, then we would consider specialization cycles, essentially like indefinite specialization.
Yeah.
But I've even had clients where they don't have many years training, but they mass out of bikini in like their second year of training.
Wow.
So, but they're just like, the kind of person that's just got awesome muscle growth genetics. And it's like you do one, like she knows who she is if she's listening, one set of lateral raises and her delts are bigger than every other guy's in the gym. Like, it's like you put them at maintenance volume and it still grows and you're like, what? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even know how. I have heard, I mean, bikini is the particular one, because I think even for men's physique, like you can still grow your legs, like if you want to. But yeah, bikini in particular, if there's certain muscle groups, you end up taking them too far. You can't really have too much glute, but everything else, there's probably like, you could have too much delt, you could have too much back width, certainly too much quad. I mean, chest, like it's hard to identify whether or not you've got too much chest, but
yeah, a lot of the bikini poses don't really show off any like pec muscularity anyway. It's not like they like are most muscular or anything.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think we can probably call it there. I think we've been recording. How long has this episode been going
50
for?
minutes.
Okay, no. We still have time for more questions. We'll get to more questions. So I think this is still a worthwhile question. I'm going to ask it. Roman Gaum has asked, what exercises to use to target the teres major the best?
This is just making me laugh because I saw a post someone made about like isolating different muscles. Imagine, I can't remember who did the post, but they said imagine if instead of like the internet being obsessed with like activating glutes, they're obsessed with like activating teres major or something like that. And that just made me think of that question. Anyway, what was the question? Sorry.
So what exercises to target the teres major the best?
Hey, Pascal here. I just quickly wanted to remind you of our online coaching service. At Revive Stronger, we put a huge emphasis on the personal aspect of our coaching. And if you want to take your physique and knowledge to the next level, hit the link in the description below.
Oh yeah, they can't see what I just did on the podcast, can they? Yeah, guess what Harry just did? Pretty much, if I remember rightly, that the function of teres major is basically abduction of the arms, is it not?
Yeah, it's the teres major is, you might assume it's the lats almost because of where it's positioned. I think probably a lot of people will assume it's the lats.
Yeah, it's when you're kind of lean, the thing that you think is your lat is actually probably your teres major, like that one there. So any vertical pulling exercise, I think wider grip, so more abduction based than shoulder extension based, would probably hit it a bit better. I know myself on pull downs, I actually start to feel like a burn here, so I'm guessing it's my sort of teres major that's getting burnt out rather than my lats, because I can tell when I feel my lats because I feel it much lower down. But so just I see people in my gym doing like setting the cable pulley high and then pulling down like this, but I just don't feel like that would be that effective. I think generally it's just more wide grip pulling stuff.
Yeah, that's like, I think they're called like V pull downs or something, where you set the cables up at the sides and pull into yourself. V pull-ins, maybe they're called. Yeah,
I can't get to grips with those. I struggle with those in my head.
They're quite isolation based, and I think generally what you said there is bang on. I wouldn't generally like tell a client that, oh, we're doing this movement because we're trying to target the teres major. Like when you're going into that level of detail, I just feel like, so you're hitting a lot of stuff. If you're doing vertical pulling and you're doing like you're plenty of pulling just generally, and you're not just doing, one specific pull down, you're going to be hitting them plenty. I just wouldn't over. I've
never seen someone with underdeveloped teres majors, but I have seen. I think an often thing you see of intermediates is really well developed teres major, but not that well developed lats, which is like myself exactly. My lats are like paper thin, but my teres major, if anything, is quite nice and thick.
Doing all the V pull-ins.
Yeah, it literally is. I need to stop all those V pull-ins, don't I? Yeah.
Excellent. So wait, no, let me do this one. So Niklas Olaya.
I'm reading it too.
Luga. Niklas, how to count sets for secondary muscle groups being used, e.g. one set of barbell row equals one set of back, one set of biceps, or set of back and half a set of biceps, or just one set of back. And then Drew has said, I think in the past they've said just pick one way, count it and stick with it. But I may be wrong about that. Well, Harry's never answered this question.
I don't think it's worth having like a quantifiable system for tracking like the sort of bleed over into like accessory muscle group and counting sets and stuff like that, I generally will just be cognizant of the fact that biceps are being worked and that there's like elbow joint volume. For example, if I'm adding more sets to pull-ups or rows, I won't necessarily think like this is adding 0.5 sets to biceps or this is adding 1 set to biceps. I'll just think like, based on what I know about this particular client in front of me and their history of injury and stuff like that, am I likely to be pushing it a bit too hard by maybe adding an extra set there or not? I guess for me, it's very, very individual based on the feedback from the person that I get. I don't know where you sit with that, Steve. Like someone jump into my mind, like myself, history of elbow tendonitis. So I just know the kind of exercises that will stress out my elbows more than others. So it's almost different. Like even if you were to add a quantifiable system, for me, a pull-up would be less bicep volume than, say, a supinated row, but only because I know that a supinated row would piss off my elbow more than a pull-up would. So it's completely individual based on the person. But generally, I just try and be cognizant of the fact that you're adding accessory sets, and I wouldn't necessarily add loads of extra sets of biceps if I'd already added lots of extra sets of rowing and pull downs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, I sit with the same. I generally kind of pick it as a set for the prime mover of the muscle group. So a barbell row would just be the back in general for me. I wouldn't then try and like ratio it out to certain muscle groups because like you said, some people, like for example, chest pressing, I think is a common one. Some people feel that majorly in their chest. Some people feel it a lot in their triceps. And for them, maybe that would be more of a tricep movement than a chest movement, but that's when individualization comes in. And if you're auto-regulating your volumes, like from like the biofeedback we get in terms of fatigue, soreness, pump, recovery, performance, then I think as long as you pick one way and then move forward with that, it starts sorting itself out. And I think that's the thing that most people don't do. Like they want, the literature says we should do 10 to 15 sets to be optimal for growth. And they're just like, okay, now how do I apply that to my program? It's a case of, well, you're different, you're individual, start like auto-regulating is essentially individualization for yourself. So I think, that was very well said.
This opens up a new can of worms, actually. You got me thinking. There's some things that I would do with all clients to make sure that they reduce all unnecessary joint fatigue as well. I think this kind of plays into that question too. Like for one thing, for what I generally recommend to most clients is avoid all kind of mixed grip deadlifting and that kind of stuff, because I don't want to add extra stress to joints that I'm not already accounting for in the volume and things like that, if that makes any sense. Like generally, like a thing I find with a lot of new clients is they're doing mixed grip deadlifts because they hate straps because straps are evil and straps steal forearm gains. So then you generally have to coax people into accepting that a double overhand is probably more beneficial because it means that we're not adding an unmeasurable amount of fatigue to a particular joint. Like in that instance, we know that we're adding a lot of elbow stress and potentially adding a lot of like maybe even neck and shoulder stress there too, that I don't want to have to factor into the way that I program. So that in that instance, I'd be like, look, we're doing everything double overhand with straps.
Is that an insight you would say more that you've developed from one-on-one PT as opposed to like when you're taking someone online?
Yeah, for sure. And generally, all female clients, I recommend they get straps from day one. I recommend it for most clients. Straps or Versagrips. Yeah, not Versagrips because they're too damn expensive. Not all of us can get influencer discounts. But 100%. Because I find most of the female clients I work with in person, they might struggle to hold on to 50 kg RDLs, but we add Versagrips or straps, and then we're getting to like 80, 90 kilo RDLs. So
especially on RDLs, I can't even imagine how people do those without straps. It's like you just like the isometric holding, like fatigue that you get on your forearms from doing an RDL, unless you're rushing them. Oh, yeah.
Well, that's what happens. They end up rushing them, and you see the RDL accelerates over the course of the set because grip is getting harder. Or they start doing. You won't be able to see me doing it, but they start doing almost like the one where they drop the knees forwards and drag the bar up their thighs because they're trying to create some friction against your thighs so you can readjust your grip quickly. And you see it a lot with the 5x5 people, like where their deadlift towards the 4th and 5th rep starts to look a little bit like that rather than just snapping up. And that's because of the whole, like, I'm not using straps.
Yeah. Use straps, guys. It's absolutely fine. Strap-ons, they're brilliant.
Strap-ons are brilliant.
Final question. I think we have time for the last one, I think. I've been avoiding it because I know Pascal knows how to pronounce your name and I cannot remember for the life of me. And this is actually something Charlotte literally said to me yesterday, she sent me this thing on Instagram, which was like, doing things is all about belief. And this guy was talking about how if you believe you can remember names, you'll remember names. He was like, I was taking people through how to remember names and they didn't believe they could remember them. But if you believe you can, you will. I always forget names. I'm terrible with names. So Charlotte sent me that. So this is me saying, I'm going to try and believe, but right now I can't possibly read that name and I have no idea how to say it. So I apologize in advance. I'll answer the question now. So when training late in the evening, say usually around 7 p.m., how would you distribute calories throughout the day? Majority of them, and especially the carbs, around the training window, or front load a bit in the consensus with the latest in regards to chrononutrition and the idea of biasing a little bit more of your calories earlier in the day. Thanks, guys. Keep up the great stuff. Cheers. Thank you so much.
That's an interesting question. But the first statement you made about the mindset stuff actually got me thinking about another thing I've observed working with people in person that I wanted to share. And that's that one thing I find myself coaching through people who are really getting into training hard for the first time ever is reminding them that even though it's hard, they can still do it. And that's something that I recommend to a lot of my online clients as well, is that we're almost trained and we have this like defense mechanism as humans that when the set gets really fucking tough, you stop it and back out of it and you're like, oh, that was it. I've hit 0 reps in reserve. And what I find myself doing is actually verbally, when the reps really start to slow down, I'm like, right, now you've got 4 more. Now we're hitting those reps in reserve targets. And I just felt like it'd be prudent to share that sort of self-coaching in your head, that when it really starts to hurt and when it really starts to become difficult to maintain a good technique, it doesn't mean you're done. You can still do it. And often people surprise themselves at how much weight they can lift. Like I've had, I know Dr. Mike has done this to me, and I've done it to other clients as well, where they were telling me that their RDL was like 70 kg was 1 rep in reserve. I'll get them up to 110 before they really hit like 1 rep in reserve. And that's just because they'd never been coached how to work hard. And I just wanted to share that try and self-coach yourself into, you can work harder than you think you can. And I think that's where a lot of natural guys maybe go wrong with their training, is they don't train. They almost move away from the like hard training too much into conservative training, and we want to bring them back in the middle ground between the two. But regarding the question and the nutrition, how would we structure it for training in the evening? I think this depends a lot with when you wake up as well, because one thing I found, and again, what kind of a nutrition phase you're in, because if you're dieting and you say wake up at 5 a.m. but you're training at 7, it's going to be really hard for you to not be drained and hungry by the time you train. So if that was the case, I would probably recommend a modified fast. That makes it sound so much more fancy than it is. But basically, I'd make you have maybe a casein shake when you wake up at around 5-ish and not have your first proper meal until maybe 10 or 11. So that way we can have like your day start then, and then have like a smaller eating window technically, in order to make appetite a little bit more manageable, because considering you're going to be awake for such a long period of time. But other than that, I would still try and do the same thing of periodizing the carbohydrates in the day to fit around the workout, and maybe have some higher fat, higher fiber content meals in the earlier part of the day. But you could alternatively just ignore the fact that you're training at 7 and just have, like, based on what they're saying about chrononutrition and stuff like that, have most of your calories in the earlier part of the day and then filter it out towards the end, because you might not get the placebo benefit of a full meal before you're training, but you will be like, you'll have glycogen stored physiologically and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's what I'd add to that, the chrononutrition, all of as far as I'm aware, the studies that we have on that are on people like not training, and throwing that training session at the end of the day completely kind of changes things quite a lot. So part of the eating a lot of food earlier in the day is because that's when we're more insulin sensitive, for example. But if you throw in a training session, you've now become more insulin sensitive.
Yeah, that's the most insulin part of the day. Yeah.
Exactly. So
part of the day.
I think your discussion there of like the protein modified fast, essentially, where you're having that casein shake in the morning, that's a great idea. And then kind of backloading more of your calories. I think the key with that would be, hopefully if they're training that late in the evening, they've got a good number of hours before they're tending to go to bed, and not to have too much post after the workout would probably be a good idea, because I think that's what would probably disrupt them the most and cause the most issues.
Training at 7, chances are that session's not finishing until 8:39, which means that the last meal realistically is going to be 9:30, 10.
So I'd make that just protein.
Yeah. probably protein and veggies just to make it feel like a normal meal that you might have. Because that was my timeline before I was a PT. I was forced to train at that time because my job was like 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. So yeah, I'd find that I had to follow that kind of like meal structure. Otherwise I was getting to the end of the day with like it's 10 p.m. and I've got 500 calories to eat. And you're like, what the hell am I going to do?
On a side note, I just bought some, what was it called? Milk protein. I think it was milk protein, which is like 80% casein and 20% whey, because I was having whey just in meals and it didn't make sense because I was having quite a big like time gap between meals and I didn't want the digestion time to be that fast. Casein is so bitty. It's just not nice. Like
it's gritty, isn't it? Yeah.
Gritty, that's what it was. It's like chalky.
It cooks better than whey though, if you're into making those bullshit like protein pancake.
I am a little bit into that bullshit.
Are you really?
Now and then. I just had it as a protein shake. But I was like, this just doesn't taste good on cereal. It feels like chalky, not tasty. Ugh.
Chalky is how I describe it. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I think we've covered virtually all the questions actually, which is awesome. And yeah, massive thanks for Harry coming on. Pascal is feeling ill. Hopefully he's going to feel better soon. So everyone give Pascal your best wishes and say a massive thank you for Harry for filling the hole. And he did a great job.
Filling Pascal's hole. I did my best.
With flipping it. Why have I forgotten what the German word for sausage is?
I don't even know. I know the French word because Hannah challenged me about it the other day.
Wurst.
Yeah.
You used your wurst to fill up his hole.
Yeah. I hope he listens to it.
he should, because he does edit them, but maybe he won't listen to it in sufficient detail. Maybe he will. We'll find out. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you soon. Take care.
Thank you.
So I'm Steve Hall, founder of Revive Stronger and a coach of Revive Stronger.
My name is Pascal Flor. I'm the co-owner of Revive Stronger and also a coach, of course.
Revive Stronger has probably been going solidly for 3 years, roughly about 3 years.
Revive Stronger, to me, it is becoming kind of my child, my foster child. It's the gathering and getting together of like-minded people.
We've been expanding the coaching team, which is helping us help more people. But each coach can only help a certain number of people.
Right now, it's all over the place. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, but there isn't that community aspect behind that.
And so the next step for us is developing a membership site.
So basically, we want to create a family and a community that is then benefiting from another.
A really cool community for people within our little niche is going to be a website.
They will get early access to our podcast.
You can access us, ask us questions.
The community aspect, we have a forum there. You can ask questions, but also you can log your journey.
There's also going to be courses on there.
Courses, presentations on different topics. Discount of past seminar footage. We will log our journey as well. We'll start vlogging.
We're going to have documentaries.
Our entire athletic journey. Furthermore, they get access to an exercise video library.
The exercises that we love for hypertrophy and maximizing hypertrophy, we're going to go through those in depth, telling you how to execute them.
We kept them concise and also mobile friendly so that you can watch them in between your sets.
I'm super excited to grow this community. The amount of value that we're going to be delivering is huge. And I'd love you to be part of it.
You will get so much out of that.
I'll see you inside.